The AI in the new motocross games for a while now, they have not been good, they have been horrible. It has been way too easy to beat them. You can get a horrible start and you can just dive up the inside, pass all of them, and then pull away by 40 seconds in 2 laps. So yeah, it's just not really fun to race against the AI. When the AI in Supercross, when they all case a big triple and they don't crash or anything like that, it's just not fun. It shows that not much effort has been put into the newer games, because if you can't program the AI to run around a track, then it's not going to be too difficult to beat them. And if we just look at a game like MX Unleashed, you can't cut up the inside. If you get a bad start, you will be in the back of the pack. And also the AI in MX Unleashed, they hit all the jumps, all their lines, and they rarely make mistakes. Sometimes they crash in the start, sometimes they case a jump and go down. But other than that, the AI in MX Unleashed are far better than in Supercross 4 or in MXGP 2020, because in MXGP 2020, once again, you can cut up the inside on the start, get a whole shot even if you have a bad start, or you can just pass through the whole pack in about a lap and a half, not even, and then pull away by 20 seconds in a couple laps, and you're gone. If we're talking about Supercross 4 or MXGP 2020 or any of the newer motocross games, you can beat them pretty much with your cock on the controller. That's how shit the AI are. So yeah, make some better AI, because if you have good AI, it just makes the game more fun to play, because no one likes just beating the AI by 30 seconds their first time playing the game. So yeah, AI sucks. Point number 1. Next, really quickly, I want to talk about no crossplay. That is a huge problem, especially when you are releasing next-gen versions of the game, because I have the Xbox Series X and the next-gen version. Nobody plays it at all. There's not one single lobby, as you can see. But if we go on MXGP 2020, where I can play with Xbox One users, there's a few lobbies. But still, there's just not enough people playing these games where I can only play with next-gen players or even other Xbox One users, because, let's be real, these games are not popular. We need to be playing with PC players, PS5, PS4, or whatever. It has to be crossplay, because online is just not full. No one plays these games, so add crossplay and more people will be playing. Next, I want to look at the fact that there is no Freeride really at all in any of these games, the newer ones, and the compounds that they do add in them, or they make, it's just one map. They're all horrible. They don't add anything special. There's no fun jumps, nothing cool to do on them. The boundaries are super strict. If there's anything fun outside the map that you want to do or go look at, you can't go, because there's just an invincible barrier, and if you try to go, it'll just reset you. But if we look at a game like MX Unleashed or even MX First Aid Free Reflex, there's a bunch of freeride maps, so much shit to do in them, so many cool jumps. And in MX Unleashed, you can freeride on every single track, Supercross and Nationals, and there's a bunch of shit to explore on them. The only fun thing I could find on a compound or freeride map in any of the newer games really is just riding up this little creek or whatever, or this little flow of water. That's pretty much it, because other than that, they don't offer much. They're horribly designed, nothing fun or cool to find on them. They're just poorly executed. In MX Unleashed, when you go on Freeride and shit and find stuff to explore, look at this. You can go chill with the camels, or you can go chill with this alligator getting roasted. How cool is that, huh? You can't do shit in these newer games. There's just no creativity from the newer developers, and it really shows. Do you know how many hours that you can spend on Freeride just having fun? So much time. I have barely even touched the compounds in the newer motocross games, because there's just nothing to do in them, and they suck. Next, I want to talk about the fact that there is no ruts or terrain deformation in any of these newer games except MXGP 3. Do you know how many games that is? Let's count. MXGP 1, 2, 2019, 2020, Supercross 1, 2, 3, 4. I forgot MXGP Pro. Can't forget about that goddamn game. That's what, 9 games that do not have terrain deformation? MXGP 3 did. Other than that, that's like 9 games that have not had terrain deformation. Obviously, if you look at MX Unleashed or really pretty much any other motocross game out there, there is no terrain deformation in any of them except pretty much MX First ATV Reflex. And I'm not including the simulators, because I haven't played those and I don't think they really apply to these types of games. But anyways, let's get back on topic. Do you know how much better or how much longer you could be playing these games if there was terrain deformation, or at least built-in ruts? You could be playing this game for days, hours, so much more time can be spent on it. but the fact that the tracks are the exact same every time, it's all about just hitting your apexes on the corners. There's no like really cool lines you can do because the ruts change and all that shit. It's just flat, no roughness at all. It's not fun. And then obviously if we go on MX vs ATV Reflex, I don't think that game has great terrain deformation. That might offend a lot of people, but it is pretty fucking crazy. It can get really rough even after one goddamn lap. If I were to do a full length moto in Supercross 4, MXGP 2020, whatever it is, 20-30 minute motos, there won't be a single rut, terrain deformation, whatever. It'll still be flat, just as it was on lap 1. And then if I go to MX vs ATV Reflex, after one lap, the track's already beat to shit, and after 30 laps or whatever you do, the track's basically unrideable. That's how crazy the terrain deformation is in that game. The ruts aren't amazing in the game, but the terrain deformation, it gets super rough. The way these newer games are made, they have to have terrain deformation or ruts, something along the line of that, because if you don't, the game's not going to last, it's not going to have anything new or exciting to it, and people won't want to play it, because that's what we want nowadays, is ruts, terrain deformation. I can guarantee you that if their next game doesn't have terrain deformation or whatever, or ruts, no one's going to be playing it for longer than a week, just like the last couple games. Do you guys remember the fire soundtrack in MX Unleashed? Those songs were fire. Not one song in that game got skipped, or even any of the older games. Nowadays, we don't even get songs with lyrics in them. It's just a bunch of techno, EDM, horrible songs. I understand that nowadays it's probably a lot harder to get licenses for good songs and stuff like that. The budget probably isn't there, whatever it may be. But the music is just horrible in these newer games. There hasn't been one game that Milestone has released where the music has been good or even tolerable. Every time when you load up a new Milestone game, you turn that shit off right away. You turn that music off instantly. There hasn't been one game that Milestone has made where I actually enjoy one song. Not one. It's a pretty minor thing, nitpicky or whatever, but for me, I enjoy music in games. The soundtrack is important in so many video games, not necessarily the motocross games, but it can still impact it quite a bit. And for me, the fact that there's just like 3 songs in each of these newer games and they're all a bunch of random techno, EDM type beats, whatever they are, they're not good songs. It really just makes me want to play the game even less. I know that is kind of a dumb thing to point out, but it is what it is. The last thing I want to talk about is how bad the DLC has been in Milestone's games. Also the fact that there barely is any DLC at all. There's no point in buying the Season's Pass because the DLC in this game is almost non-existent, and even when there is some DLC, it is so overpriced, it's not even fair. There isn't even any DLC at all in MXGP 2020. They just released a couple tracks for free in updates during the game's life cycle, but they should have been in the game at launch, but they just weren't. For Supercross 4, you can buy a 125 two-stroke DLC with Seattle, I believe it is, which is a remake track from Supercross 3, and it was poorly done, but it comes with the 4 125 two-strokes for like 13 bucks Canadian. Same thing with the 250 two-strokes, 13 bucks Canadian comes with. Indianapolis track, horribly made. I've already talked about this in previous videos. It is a complete joke that they can charge people for the DLC in Supercross 4. Even in any of Milestone games, they have not really made any good DLC at all, as far as I remember. All the Monster Cup DLCs have been so poorly made, especially in Supercross 4, and they overcharge you like crazy. In Supercross 4, it's about 8 bucks for the 2011 Monster Cup, which is so poorly made, I didn't even want to buy it. I watched a couple of videos on YouTube, and I did not want to buy it one bit. If you look back at older MX games, there was a lack of DLC, but the content was good. The point I'm trying to make here is that the DLC in these newer games are just fucking horrible. Except MX vs ATV All Out, the DLC in that game is pretty good. But every other game, the DLC is just horrible, shit, overpriced, or non-existent. You can't expect people to play a game for more than a year if you're not going to release any type of DLC, or if you're not going to make it reasonably priced. Long story short, the DLC is a joke. So that's pretty much the end of this video. I could have talked about, the physics, the whips, the scrubs, all that shit, but the scrubs and whips don't really mean a whole lot to me. It's mainly the on-ground physics and stuff like that, and I think they're okay. But my main points were just terrain deformation, music, DLC, whatever else was in the video. Yeah, so these newer motocross games, they just aren't cutting it. It almost reminds me of Call of Duty nowadays. That franchise is just going down the drain. Those games are so bad nowadays, and it's the same thing with these motocross games. They've been bad for a while now, and they just keep getting worse and worse. No improvements at all, really, except the graphics, and that's about it. It is pretty sad to see, because I used to love these games. I still, deep down in my heart, have a desire to play these games and do love them deep down. But there's just not much really to do with them anymore, because there's no content, and there's nothing in these games that just want to keep you around for even a couple months to play them. So that's the end of this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed. Have a good day, and take care.